The rain had just stopped when Eliana Brooks stepped off the bus and stared up at the towering glass building of Everhart Innovations. Her shoes were damp, the hems of her thrift store slacks slightly frayed, but she didn't care. In her hands, she clutched a worn leather folder like it contained treasure, and to her it did. It held everything she had, her dream, her designs, her future. The lobby smelled like polished marble and espresso. She walked in slowly, unsure if the echo of her footsteps sounded confident or desperate. The receptionist sat at a sleek white desk, scrolling through her phone with perfectly manicured nails. Without looking up, she asked in a monotone voice, "Can I help you?" Eliana stepped forward and tried to steady her voice. "I'm here to apply for the junior designer internship. I saw the posting online." The receptionist finally looked up, slowly scanning Eliana from head to toe. Her lips curled into a smirk, her tone suddenly sarcastic. "You're here to apply?" She let out a soft chuckle. "Sweetheart, we get Ivy League grads applying for that internship. Most of them have portfolios on iPads. You have a paper folder." Eliana's face flushed. "Yes, ma'am, I don't have the newest tech. I taught myself design at the public library." The receptionist raised her eyebrows and gave a long, dramatic sigh. "Look, we don't really accept walk-ins, and honestly, there's no point unless you've got a strong online presence or a referral. Maybe check out some smaller firms." Eliana stood frozen, her heart thudding in her chest. She had worked on this for months. She skipped meals to afford printouts. She borrowed internet time from the diner next to the bus station. This wasn't just some experiment. This was her only shot. But clearly, that didn't matter here. She swallowed the lump in her throat and turned to leave, when a voice cut through the silence of the lobby. "Is there a problem here?" Both women turned to see a tall man in a navy blue suit stepping out of the private elevator. His grey, streaked hair was neatly styled, and he held a steaming mug of coffee. He looked like someone important, not in the flashy way, but the kind of man who owned the place. The receptionist straightened in her seat. "Oh, Mr. Everhart, no problem at all." Julian Everhart, CEO of the company, walked up to them with a curious glance. "I heard the word folder. You still get those?" he said, half joking. Eliana hesitated, her hands gripping the edges of the worn folder. "Yes, sir. I came to apply. I don't have an online portfolio yet, but everything I've designed is in here." Julian held out his hand. "May I take a look?" The receptionist looked visibly uncomfortable as Eliana passed him the folder. Julian flipped it open and began turning the pages. Sketches, logo ideas, color palettes, brand redesigns, all hand-drawn, carefully colored or inked, and labeled in neat handwriting. It wasn't polished like some digital portfolios, but the ideas, they were fresh, original, even brilliant. His eyebrows lifted slightly as he turned another page. "You did all this yourself?" "Yes, sir. I've been learning on my own. I use the computers at the local library. I know it's not industry standard, but I've worked hard to understand the fundamentals." The receptionist interjected with a brittle laugh. "She said she doesn't even have a LinkedIn. I was just explaining how competitive the internship is." Julian closed the folder gently and turned to the receptionist. "You were explaining or assuming?" His tone was even, but sharp enough to make her pale. "You know, I started this company from a coffee shop. No fancy tech, no degrees, just ideas. I'm not interested in how someone looks. I care about how they think." He looked back at Eliana. "Come with me." Eliana blinked. "Right now?"
"Right now," he nodded. "Let's see what you've got."
She followed him through a set of doors behind the reception desk, up to the executive floor, the place she thought she'd only ever imagine. Her heart was racing, not from fear anymore, but possibility. As they stepped into a glass conference room with panoramic views of the skyline, two lead designers joined them, curious about the sudden meeting. Julian laid the folder on the table. "This is Eliana Brooks. She's here to apply for the internship. I think you both need to see what she's created." Eliana stood quietly while they turned the pages. The room was silent, except for the soft rustle of paper. One of the designers finally looked up. "These are incredible. Where did you study?" Eliana smiled faintly. "Nowhere. I studied coffee shop logos, billboard ads. I read books, copied layouts, watched tutorials on library computers. I just fell in love with design." There was a pause. Julian leaned back in his chair and tapped a pen on the table. "I've seen hundreds of portfolios. This is the first one in a long time that made me stop and feel something." He looked at her. "You're not applying for the internship anymore. We're offering you a spot as a full-time junior designer, starting Monday." Eliana gasped. "Are you serious?" He nodded. "Completely." Eliana sat on the edge of the glossy black chair, her eyes darting between the towering glass windows and the three high-level designers now gathered in the room. Everything felt surreal. One minute she had been dismissed at the front desk, and the next she was being offered a seat at a table she never thought she'd be near. Her fingers fidgeted nervously in her lap, but her mind was already racing with ideas. Julian Everhart leaned forward, hands clasped together, observing her. "I want to know something," he said. "If you had unlimited resources, software, a team, everything, what would be the first thing you'd redesign?" Eliana paused, then reached into her folder again and pulled out a folded paper, labeled Everhart Labs, Conceptual Refresh. She had sketched it months ago, not knowing if she'd ever have the courage to show it. "I was fascinated by your company's original branding, but I noticed that the lab division hasn't been updated visually to match the innovation it delivers." Julian raised an eyebrow. She unfolded the sketch. Sleek, modern elements with fluid lines, a subtle E woven into a digital circuit. Color palette adjusted to convey reliability and breakthrough. She explained it all, layer by layer, without a single stutter. One of the senior designers whistled softly. "That's bold." Julian smiled. "It's fresh, visionary even, and no one asked you to do this." Eliana shook her head. "No, sir. I did it for myself, for practice." Julian closed the folder again. "Remind me again, how old are you?" 19. The room went quiet. "Most of the applicants for this role are recent master's graduates. You've managed to outthink them with nothing but raw talent and library time." Eliana looked down, overwhelmed. "I just want to work hard and learn more." "You will," Julian said. "Starting Monday, we're giving you your own workstation, the tools you need, and a team to shadow. You'll be part of the brand innovation group." When she walked out of the building that day, the receptionist didn't say a word. She looked stunned, eyes wide, watching as Julian himself walked Eliana out of the elevator and handed her a branded envelope. For the first time that day, Eliana's step felt light. She didn't feel invisible anymore. At home, her aunt cried when she heard the news. They celebrated with leftover Chinese food and soda. Eliana's little cousin asked if she was famous now. She laughed and said no, but deep down, she felt like she had finally been seen. The next week at Everhart, she worked quietly but relentlessly. People began to notice. She offered fresh ideas during brainstorms. She reimagined designs no one had touched in years. Her sketches got pinned on whiteboards. Her opinions were asked during meetings. Word began spreading about the girl with the paper portfolio. Then one Friday, Julian called her into his office. "There's a charity campaign we're supporting," he said. "A national foundation for underprivileged youth. They want a new visual identity, and I want you to lead the concept. No pressure. Just see what you can do." Eliana blinked. "You want me to lead it?" Julian smiled. "You've got the heart for it, and the eye. Sometimes it takes someone who's lived the problem to solve it." For the next 5 days, she poured everything into the project. Late nights, endless drafts, second-guessing every pixel. But when she finally presented the final design, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. It was powerful. It was human. It told a story. Her story, really, in every color and stroke. The foundation loved it. Press picked it up. Blogs started referring to the intern-turned designer who stunned Silicon Valley. Everhart's image soared. Julian walked into the break room that afternoon and raised his coffee cup. "To Eliana," he said, "the best hire we didn't see coming." The team applauded. Later that week, Eliana bumped into the same receptionist in the lobby. This time the woman didn't smirk. She offered a quiet smile. "Hey, I saw your work on LinkedIn. You're really talented. I was wrong." Eliana smiled, her tone kind. "Thank you. And it's never too late to look again." Months passed, and Eliana continued to rise. She started mentoring other interns, some with rough backgrounds like hers. Julian eventually invited her to sit in on hiring panels. "You see things the rest of us miss," he told her. She didn't forget where she came from. She never would. She still rode the bus sometimes, still answered messages from aspiring designers who couldn't afford tuition. She knew what it was like to be doubted, to be overlooked, to be laughed at for even daring to dream. But now she knew what it felt like to prove them wrong. And more importantly, she knew what it meant to help others rise too. Because when kindness meets talent, and someone dares to look beyond appearances, a life changes. Maybe a whole company changes. And sometimes, just sometimes, even the world shifts a little.